In this video, we're going to demonstrate how to do a master model. And a master model, by that I mean a template model that you can use to either copy or link and use that in your subsequent designs. First things first, I'm going to show you what version of FreeCAD I'm using. I'm using 0.20.1 and I'm very happy with this version. I will upgrade when they release a new one. And I keep checking on the dev version to see if the topological naming issue has been resolved. So far I haven't seen that, but hopefully they're working on that. Okay, for those of you who have the startup macro that I showed you in a previous video, you can use that to get to the first steps. I'm going to do it manually because some people don't have the macro. So first thing I'm going to do is create a file, and then inside that file I'm going to create a part, and then inside that part I'm going to create a body. People have asked me, why do you use parts and then bodies? They just use bodies. I do it for organization. There are advantages to having parts for assemblies, and I just find it much more organized to have a part and a body. Okay, so now I'm going to create a sketch, and I'm going to create that on the XY plane. And imagine, if you will, so I used to be a tool maker. I used to make injection and compression mold tools. And to do that, we used to have a thing called a bolster, which is basically the frame in which you put all the contents of the mold tool in. So the actual center part of the mold tool would be the part that actually makes a plastic part. But the outside is the part that holds it into the machine. And so those parts that hold it in the machine, those bolsters, are standard because the machine is, the platens on the machine are standard. So you need to have the bolster be standard so it fits inside the molding machine. And for those of you who don't know about molding, don't worry about it. It's just essentially what I'm talking about is having a standard part. So my standard part, I'm going to create just a plate. I'm going to create that plate like this, and I'm going to put some holes in that plate. It has 4 holes typically on the outsides, and then 1 center hole like this. And again, it's just an approximation. This isn't something I'm going to use, but I thought it would be interesting to have something reasonable to work with. So all I'm doing is I'm aligning these holes both horizontally with each other and vertically with each other, just so that they are aligned. Do that one horizontally as well. And then I'm going to make all these holes on the outside anyway, the same size. In fact, when we made them, typically one of the holes would be a different size, but I'm not going to do that for this purposes. Again, I'm just creating something quick here. I'm just going to dimension out for one of those, and we'll make that 40, and just rounding up because it just makes it easier to read, that they're not specific to anything. And I have that, and those are good. And now I need to say this one and this one are symmetric around this line, and this one and this one have symmetry around this line. And then I'm going to just dimension these outside shapes. Again, we're going to just make them round numbers. Dimension 95. This a dimension, and we'll call that 30. Beautiful. So now we have a fully constrained model. I'm just going to close that, and I'm going to pad it. And in my pad, I'm just going to say I'm symmetric to the plane, and 10 millimeters for this particular purpose is perfectly fine. Now, of course, we could create a spreadsheet, and all of this could be parametric. So we can use all that parametric capability of FreeCAD if we want to in this, but I'm not going to because I don't want to overcomplicate it. I want to keep the videos fairly short. First thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to save this file, and I'm going to save it as master model, and you're going to see there's already one there because I had a bit of a disaster. I recorded the entire video, and for some reason the sound didn't work, so I ended up with video files with no sound. So now we're recreating them, which is always fun. So this part I'm going to call my template part. So I'm going to just rename it. I'm going to call it template part. And there you have it. So that's my template part. Now, if I want to have a copy of that part that I can start with this, then I'm going to modify it. I can do that. So what I'll do is I'll go into this body and I'll say copy. And I don't need all the planes, so I'm just going to take all those off and say OK. I'm going to create a new part, and inside that part I'm going to say paste, and there's my body. I'm just going to move that body inside the part. There's my body, and I'm going to turn off the template part, and I'm going to call this one, I'm going to rename it to copy part, just so you can differentiate it. So in my copy part, I have, because I did a copy paste, I took over the sketch and the pad, so I have the sketch and the pad, so I can make modifications if I want to. So if I go into this body, I'm going to right click on it and toggle it to active body. So now I'm working inside here. I'm going to add a new sketch, and I'm just going to create, make that sectional view so I can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to create a square hole here. So I hit that guy there, we'll make those two equal, and we'll give it a dimension, that line, 14, just for grins and giggles. And then I'm going to say from this guy to this guy, give that a dimension. We'll call that 26, slide it over a little bit, close that, and we'll create a little hole there, say through all just because. And there it is. So now my copy part has a hole in it. And can you predict what happened to the template part? So I'm going to turn off my copy part, and I will turn on my template part. And as you can see, there's no hole. So my copy part is exactly that. It's a copy of the template part that I can then modify it standalone. It's not linked in any way. So any changes I make to my copy part won't change my template part. Equally, if I go into my template part now, so I'm going to turn off my copy part, go into my template part. If I go in here to that sketch, and let's say I change this diameter of this hole to 10 and close, you can see these are bigger. I'm going to close that, open my copy part, I'll go into the sketch just so we can see it. You'll see these are still 8 millimeters. So it hasn't changed this copy at all. So the copy is standalone. You can do what you want to it. You basically using the template as a starting block that you can then change. I think that's very powerful if you're creating multiples of things that are similar but not the same and don't need to always be the same. A copy is the way to go. So you can create that copy. You have all the original sketches and information, the bodies and all of the pieces, and you can modify it for any way that you desire. Okay, so I'm going to close that copy and show you another way to use a template part and make another model. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a link, and I'm just going to select the template part and I'm going to link it, and I'm going to rename this. I'm going to call it link part. And then in my link part, I have the body and I have the pad, and of course inside the pad I have the sketch. So I'm going to turn off my template part, close that. I'm going to make my body in my link part active, and then I'm going to go into the sketch and I'm just going to add another hole, literally another hole here. We'll give it a dimension just for clarity. I'm going to make it a small hole, and I'm going to give it a dimension from here to here so we can constrain everything. Close that, and now you see I have the hole poking through in my linked part. Now if I turn off my linked part and I go to my template part, you can see I have a hole in my template part now. And the reason I have the hole in my template part is because the link is bidirectional with that original. So if I go into my template part now, into that sketch, and I make this hole, I'm going to modify it to 10, so you can see a difference. Now you see that hole's much bigger. I turn off my template part, turn on my linked part, you can see the bidirectionality. So it has changed this. If I go into that sketch in the linked part, you will see that the linked part now shows as 10 millimeters. So why would I use this? I would use this if I want to have a part included in a new model that is a copy of another part, but it should always be the same as that part. So this template part now is driving this linked part. And any time that I make a change to my template, so let's say, for instance, the screws that go into our machine, we buy a new machine and we need these holes to be smaller. We can change it in our template part, and it will change in any linked part. Any other model that uses that template part will change if it's linked. Now, of course, if I go into my copy part, so I'm going to turn off my link part, go into my copy part, there's no hole there. The hole doesn't exist. The hole hasn't changed. Nothing is linked. So my copy part is absolutely standalone and is not being affected if I change the link part or if I change the template part. Now, one other thing you can do, so the bidirectionality is obviously an excellent feature of FreeCAD. So I can be working on another part and I need to tweak another change. Instead of having to come back to the template part, I can just do it from the linked part, and I know it will change my template part. Now, the other thing I can do is I can say when I make a link, I can make that link a sublink. So what you can do is you can, I'm going to just turn on my template part, double click it and make that active. So I can create a sublink from this body. I'm going to create a part, and then I'm going to say select this body and create a sublink, and I'm going to look at this sublink. So I'm just going to turn off my turn off my template part, and linked part was on. So I'm going to turn off my template part, and now I have a link here. So this linked part doesn't have the pad, doesn't have the sketch. So this is because it is a sublink, it's not bidirectional. It's just linked to that template part, and will only change if we change the template part or one of the linked parts. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to rename this to make it easier to see, sublink part. And so you can see the sublink part is actually just a linked instance of the template part. The only way I can change it, I can't make any changes to it here. The only way I can change it is to go back into my original sketch over here in my template part and make changes there, and they will change in this link. So I'll demonstrate that just quickly. I'm going to go back into my template part, go back into that sketch, and I'll just add another hole. Well, actually, you know what I'll do is I'll delete this hole to that view. Just delete that hole. And close that. Now it doesn't have the hole anymore. So if I go into my sublink part, I'm going to turn off my template part. The sublink part doesn't have the hole, but also my link part doesn't have the hole. So all of these three are in synchronization. So if I turn off I'm going to turn off my template part. And I go into my link part and I modify that. I'm going to put a square hole in this time, just so you can see it. I'm going to put it offset square hole, and I'll make those equal a dimension. And then we're going to give this a dimension. And then I'm going to give it a dimension this way. Just so it's constrained. And now you can see there's a big hole through this part. What do you think happened to my sublink part? I'm going to turn off my link part, turn on my sublink part, and there's that hole. And if I turn off my sublink part, turn on my template part, there's the hole. All the links are the same. The bidirectionality still works. The sublink doesn't have bidirectionality, but it is linked to the others and will change when they do. So hopefully this has helped, and hopefully you can see the power in FreeCAD to be able to create something and use that either as a linked instance where it's always connected to the template part, or as a standalone copy where you can use it as a template part that is the beginning of your model, and then you can make absolutely any modifications you like without affecting the template part. So you have the best of both worlds. You can do either way. I personally would use the copy part if I was creating something that was starting out from a template. It's going to be similar but not the same, and I want to make the modifications locally in that part. I would use the linked part if I was creating something where I knew I had to go back and everything had to be the same. For instance, a good example is something that fits inside of something. If the other thing that it fits into changes, you want all of your models to change that way, you can certainly do that. And I use the example of screw holes because if you have a different pattern where the screw holes have changed, you can, with one change in the template model or the template part, the master model, you can change all of the others. And that is a massive power. In a free CAD system is amazing to have that power. Then, of course, it can all be parametric too. So you could all be spreadsheet driven. So just imagine if you go into your spreadsheet, you change a dimension, and then that dimension gets propagated throughout multiple models because you've linked them all together. So again, I hope that helps. If you've enjoyed the video, please do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. It's free, doesn't cost you anything, but it does help other people to see the videos. It helps Google's algorithm to send my videos out and gets me more views so I can get more people looking, more people subscribing, and build the channel out, and that helps me. If, of course, you want to donate to the channel, you can do that by joining the channel, become a channel member, or you can go to the link below and join Patreon and become a patron. Those guys get these videos earlier. They also get some insider stuff. They get some additional videos I create that are just quickies, that are tips. And I do that to appreciate their support. And I do appreciate their support. It helps me to continue to create these videos. So thanks again. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one.